Hello, Wargamers. My name is Doug with 2 Plus Tough, and I want to talk about this guy. This is the latest lore companion to drop from Bellum, the makers of Conquest, Laxed Argument of Kings, and Conquest First Blood, kind of the skirmish variant of it. Now, if you've followed this channel since I got into Conquest a couple years ago, you'll know that Bellum has put out a couple different lore companions, basically just kind of compiled printed materials that they have from What Online. This is actually very different. They took a very different direction and a much more aggressive value approach, I would say, to a product that is explicitly about lore and artwork. Sorry, I get my phone out of the way here. And I'm going to be talking about it here today. I'm going to go to the downward cam. We're going to talk about what this product is, the actual lore companion, because it comes in two varieties. And then we're going to pivot over to discussing what comes in either one. So start off with a massive thank you to Bellum, who sent this over to me. It is a stunning hardcover, so there is to that point, a hardcover and a softcover version. The hardcover comes in at $70 US-ish, and it is, all of them I believe are like signed copies, and they're just collector's things, right? The other one, however, so all the contents that we're going to discuss are also available for only $30. So like, it's a softcover version, not signed. But if it's not a collector thing that you are personally interested in, it's a much better route. They both contain the same amount of information and artwork, so I'm going to go through my copy here, but just know that the other one also has that as well. We'll kick it off here. Quest Lore Companion. We start with a map, essentially, of the known world. It's getting expanded all the time, with little highlights here and there on more details, but that's essentially the map. Have a few notes here. Now, I want to pull this page up and hover here. We're going to look at this, the overall contents of this book. Essentially, this is an all-in-one purchase for all of the lore that you will need, not just for now, but also for probably the next upcoming years. It is full of artwork. It is an incredible first handshake in introducing people to Conquest. I cannot state that enough. It's divided, of course, into various chapters. There's 5 history chapters and then the factions section, which we'll talk about here in a second. What this is a mixture of some stuff that is available online and a whole bunch of new information that is exclusive to this book. For example, there's a section here on Genesis, the actual start of the setting. Now, the idea of primordials and stuff, there are lore blurbs online from Bellum that you can get that for free. However, what this book does is essentially expands on it, adds a ton of quotes and research from in-world characters, and specifically when it comes to, let me fast forward here, the Exiles, they created an entire new history for the Exiles. These represent basically the alien race that came to Ea after their home was annihilated and have then later on split into becoming the Weaver Courts, the Spires, and there's a few other factions we'll get to here. But my point is, some of it, like the primordial stuff, is available online already, and then this is a perfect example of them injecting a whole bunch of more detail. Nothing is really that I have seen, like, I guess, retconned. I don't see any changes. It's just kind of zoomed in a little bit. So we have the whole history of what happened when the Exiles came to the planet. They're kind of split. More discussion about biomancy and the idea of how they can use that power. Now coming back here to the main section for contents. So that's a great example of how they fleshed things out. We have Genesis, the history of the universe, the rise of dragons and their creation of the Dweghome, as well as the Exiles arriving to Ea. The Age of Worship is when mankind really rose to prominence with Haslia, and the Dominion, before it was the Old Dominion, was supreme. And then the fall essentially covers the fall of the Dominion and basically sets up the world that Conquest now occupies in the current timeline. So you will be all caught up. The last one here is a new world, which just introduces you to the way things are now, functionally. So again, all of these are the same in terms of there's little bits of information that you could glean. You're not out of the loop if you don't own this book. You could kind of piece it together from what's online. However, this injects a lot more detail and dimension to each one of these kind of epochs in history. After that, we pivot over here to the various factions. Now, there's a few things you're going to notice up top. One, some of the factions printed here were already printed in other lore blurbs. That's because this book essentially hits the reset button. Instead of just adding the updated information for new factions, they compiled it all so that this singular product can be handed to someone and they can know everything. You'll also notice there's a few new factions that we do not know about here in Conquest. So for example, the basic breakdown for most of them is the faction as a whole, so Spires, for example, at the top here. And then there are the sub-factions that make up the main faction. So the Sovereign Lineages, the Directorate, the Underspire. And then for all of them, there is, in the kind of a star symbol here, a short story or a piece of in-world literature that is adding a lot of dimension to the faction. So you read about them in more of a third-person factual distinction with their lore blurbs, and then you get to the story that kind of contextualizes them, which I do appreciate. A lot of these stories are unique to this book, and so if you want them, you have to get this. But they do a lot to basically make a more action-oriented narrative than just reading facts on a page. Now, all the factions are represented: Spires, Dwegom, Hundred Kingdoms, Nords, Wadroon, Old Dominion, City-States, Sorcerer Kings, the Euroni, and the Weaver Courts. Now, the Weaver Courts, I will shout out, they have probably the closest thing you can call a retcon in terms of, I think they just kind of took it off the back burner and are now putting it on the front. So we just see a lot of expanded lore. I don't think anything was really contradicted, but yeah. And then for these last bits, these are actually previews of future armies that are coming to the game. So let's have a look at some of these things here. I want to fast forward. For example, I've been talking a lot about the Nords lately, so we'll have a great piece of artwork that they all start with. Their general faction lore. We have the sub-factions that make them up, introducing the archetypes that all the units fall into, and then your unique story. So they all kind of look like this from the outset. Artwork, introduction, sub-factions, and so on. So let's fast forward past the stuff that we know and get to the things that are new. Yeah, we'll start here with Mastiga. We have reports from a few different places. These are kind of a in-world universe story. We don't get the idea of this. It's more of an unknowable horror. It's a primordial enemy. We have the Han Dynasty, which the way that they kind of seem described from the lore blurb here is where the Euroni are Japanese demons. These are Chinese mortals. That's kind of the easiest way that I could describe it to you. I'm sure I'm butchering that, but they are a non-Haslia devoted branch of humanity that evolved in their own complete separate way. And so that's our little thing there. I'm excited for the model range because I do like the mortal side of things typically. I wasn't expecting Euroni to have none. Then we have Desmaserial. I don't know how to pronounce that. Desmaserial. And this is Heaven and Hell are curious concepts is the first sentence. I love that quite a bit. This seems very much like an as above, so down below kind of religion where there's a lot of duplication, mirroring, and that kind of stuff. I like that. Helheim, which is a faction that I first heard rumored about when I started the game years ago. Think of it as Nord demons. So all of their mythologies and that kind of stuff given form. So just horrors from the abyss that are somewhat icy Nord themed. And then there's Famine, who I'm very excited for as well, because Famine has been described as Cthulhu Lovecraftian horror. In fact, a lot of the terminology you'll see in this, like the deep, treasures of the deep, awakening of greed, and the dawn of dreamers, all that kind of stuff sounds very Lovecraftian. And that is it for that. So, like I'm saying, it's an incredible book. There's tons of value in here, because even if you know the stuff that's written online, there's a ton of great new stories. The artwork is stellar. I hope that you've been watching enough to glean that the layouts for this thing are just exceptional. Between the print quality, the actual information, the new stories that they added. I haven't gotten through all of them yet, but I have very much enjoyed looking through the new Nord stuff. Oh, and I did read the 100 Kingdoms one. I really enjoyed that section as well. I want to give a massive thank you over to Parabellum for sending me this. It does mean a lot to me. And if you are someone who enjoys the lore like I do, this is the kind of book that it is so professionally printed and put together. It's the kind of thing you could have on a coffee table if friends come over. It is also the kind of thing that you could hand a buddy and be like, yo dog, learn about Conquest and play it with me. And that's one thing I want to suggest here. If you're somebody who is trying to grow your local Conquest group, including store owners, if you're a store owner, grab like one or two of the softback copies and write store copy on the top of it and just leave it on the shelf. Because flipping through this book is the introduction to the game. It's incredible artwork. It's lots of great stories. It costs them nothing to sit and get engaged with the hobby. And if they like it, well then Parabellum has a whole suite of onboarding products to get them plugged in. Because to be honest, if they don't like this or like the contents of it, they are not going to like Conquest. Because this book is baller. The price point at $30 for the softback version is killer. So grab one for your local gaming group to hand off to new players who are interested or just kind of, you know, hanging out in the background and maybe want to learn more about the setting, or for yourself to throw on your coffee table or your nightstand so you can read it when you fall asleep. We're going to be covering some of the lore for the newer factions coming out, but I always leave some stuff out because I want people to have value from buying these kinds of books. So go consider buying your own. I have a coupon code in the description down below that'll save you 10%. And if you do, these things become very affordable, like $27 for the softcover version is great. If you are receiving your copy, because they're just coming off pre-order now, I believe, let me know if you have a favorite specific piece of artwork or section within here. For mine personally, it's so hard to beat this picture from the Nords. It just has such energy to it that seeing it as the artwork that embodies the faction makes absolute sense. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I will catch you in my next Parabellum video. Happy wargaming, friends.